Welcome back to Beyond the Surface. I'm Quinton Mundell, and as always, I'm joined by my colleague and fellow HBC's registered counsellor, Jean-Marie Olwage. Today, we're diving into a subject that is often whispered about but rarely spoken about in depth: pornography addiction.
I feel this is such a privilege to be able to discuss this topic because it's one of those topics that sits at the crossroads of shame, secrecy, and curiosity. So people either avoid it altogether or maybe they make jokes about it, but rarely do we talk about its psychological and relational impact.
Exactly. And we'll be exploring how porn use can start as curiosity, entertainment, or even as stress relief. But for some people, it becomes something that feels out of control. It becomes a cycle they can't break.
I just want to clarify for our listeners, the term pornography addiction isn't officially listed in the DSM-5, and that's the manual that we use to diagnose. But clinicians talk about problematic pornography use. But just because it's not in the manual, it doesn't mean that it isn't something that people are really struggling with. And in my day-to-day practice, I really do see it as something that people are struggling with.
In my own practice, I've seen that pornography is something that a lot of men really struggle with. Not just the behavior itself, but the emotional weight, disconnection that often come with it.
And what we see is people who feel their viewing is compulsive, who experience distress, secrecy, guilt, and often damaged relationships. Those are real struggles that need real support. So pornography, in my case, I always see the impact it has actually on relationships, especially. Where do you see pornography play out in the impact of pornography in your clients?
I think people often want to know, where does pornography viewing actually start becoming a problem? So sometimes they won't necessarily see it as an addiction, but they can start seeing the impact it's having in their personal relationships and in their lives. It's starting to take a lot more of their time, a lot more of their energy, and they kind of want that clarification of where is this becoming maybe an unhealthy habit. So it's not only about how much porn somebody watches, but it's also why they're watching it. So is it maybe a form of escape? Is it to numb pain? Is it escape trauma? Are they maybe trying to avoid emotional intimacy? Maybe their relationship, their primary relationship, is not going so well. So those deeper questions often reveal what's actually going on beneath the surface.
I also think it definitely has an impact, consciously or subconsciously. I had this one couple. The man would watch porn while his partner was cooking. He thought it was just harmless fun, maybe even exciting. But at the end of the day, it created a secret between them. And over time, that withholding built walls.
The moment you have a secret you withhold from your partner, there's a lack of openness. And automatically, if there's a lack of openness, there's lack of communication. And your heart is then shutting down. Relationship is all about the heart. It's all about connectedness. And the moment you have a secret and you're not open about it in a relationship, I automatically think it has an impact, because now you withhold something, but you also withhold a part of your energy, a part of your essence from the other individual as well.
And over time, that withholding builds walls. You don't even notice. The intimacy fades, not because there's no love, but because there's no full honesty. And that's where disconnection really begins, in the small, hidden spaces where we stop being fully seen.
Secret world, to some degree.
Definitely.
And there's also a brain explanation for this part of it as well. So the pornography obviously has a payback, and that's a positive payback to start off with. So your reward system in your brain gets hijacked. And then every time the person views the pornography, obviously dopamine gets released and the brain begins to crave that surge. So even if the actual enjoyment fades over time, it's the same, similar with substance use, your brain is always seeking that initial same high again.
also have clients that tell me they don't actually want to watch porn anymore. They don't actually even enjoy it, but it's like they have to do it. And that's when we know the behavior has shifted from recreational to compulsion.
It's no longer about pleasure at that point. It's about regulation, trying to escape stress, numb emotions, or fill an inner void.
And it kind of works the same with drug use as well. They're eventually not doing it any longer for the pleasure of it. They're actually just doing it as a coping mechanism to avoid the pain and the discomfort of not engaging in it.
Most definitely. And that's why people can feel trapped in cycles of shame, of secrecy, and yet still go back. That's addiction-like behavior in action.
I think if we expand on the neuroscience for a moment, it's key to understand what's actually going on. And a lot of my clients will actually ask me, what is the brain's role in this? Why can't I just stop doing certain things? Why is it not just as simple as saying no? And it's because pornography use can actually cause changes in the brain that's very similar to somebody who's using substances.
The first thing is the dopamine spike. Porn gives a supernormal stimulus, a strong dopamine release than everyday life. And over time, the brain starts to rewire itself, chasing more novelty, more intensity, more extreme content.
And I think that's why someone starts with fairly what we would call vanilla content. So your softcore pornography, but over time, they need more shocking or taboo material to get that same level of stimulation. And then it becomes like this classic tolerance effect. I think as well, with the invention of the internet and with COVID lockdown, there is just such a vast amount of stuff available on the internet, where in the old days you'd have to get hold of a magazine perhaps, and that was all you had at your disposal. You now have an entire world that's opened up. So in an intimate relationship with someone, you don't have as much to work with, whereas in pornography, it's almost limitless.
The accessibility makes it quite challenging because that what we often see next is tolerance building, almost like with any other addiction. The same content doesn't have the same effect anymore, and that's when people start pushing their boundaries without even realizing it.
The more the brain is flooded with dopamine, the less sensitive the reward system becomes. So everyday pleasure like intimacy of a partner, spending time with friends, or even hobbies become dull in comparison. So that's why I want to go back to that addiction.
The mind starts to believe that it's those extremes that create a kind of artificial excitement, something that feels more stimulating than anything else.
But at the end of the day, what it also creates is isolation.
Absolutely. And you become used to those extreme highs and extreme lows. And where in recovery, you have to get used to a much more moderate kind of day-to-day existence. So I've even had clients say, I can't feel attracted to my partner anymore. And it's not because they don't love their partner. They'll very often say, I still very much love my partner, but their brain has been rewired to respond only to really hyper-stimulating pornographic images.
And then there's the withdrawal side. If someone tries to stop, they might feel irritable, restless, anxious, even depressed. And the brain is essentially crying out for the dopamine hit. It's become dependent on it. Now, many people think that only drug addiction has withdrawal symptoms, but porn addiction also actually have a withdrawal side. So if someone tries to stop, they might feel irritable, restless, anxious, even depressed, which is a normal withdrawal of any addiction behavior, because the brain is essentially crying out for the dopamine hit it's become dependent on.
I think in recovery, they can become frustrated because they feel it's a sign of weakness. Why isn't there something I can't just stop? Why is there something I can't control? Why am I still going through withdrawals? And I think that's why it's important that we really need to also see this through a compassionate, trauma-informed lens, that people don't keep watching just because they're immoral or they're weak. Their brains have literally adapted to this behavior and it's become a habit.
Which also explains why shame is such a big part of this. people feel disgusted with themselves, but the shame often drives them back to the behavior. It's a vicious cycle. And I think many people don't always understand shame, but I always say a simple definition of shame is anything you don't want other people to know. That creates shame. And then due to this porn addiction, it creates definitely certain fantasies and certain ideas, certain concepts. Sometimes that can lead to cheating on their partner. And that's all stuff they don't want other people to know. And that is where shame starts to breed.
Pornography addiction is such a personal addiction. It's related to your intimate life. It's a very intimate part of yourself as well. So there is a lot of shame around it, and they struggle to deal with it. Often they'll say to me, can't there be some other addiction that I can struggle with, like alcohol, or even that is society will view in a sort of more accepting light, if I can put it that way, where pornography addiction is very much a sheltered part of someone's life. So to be able to come out and say, I need help with this, it takes almost really a tremendous amount of courage.
I think it's so easy also to hide it, because you can watch porn in the bathroom, you can watch porn in bed. No one even needs to know. I know of a client, and then they were going on holiday, and then the husband would watch like porn in the bathroom. And later on, she only realized it when she could see the porn history. Even on the anniversary, it was like watching porn 3 times a day. So quite interesting how hidden it is. I think that is what makes it also so difficult to bring it in the open, because it's so easy to hide.
People are not necessarily going to find a stash of magazines on your bed anymore.
True.
So I think if you're listening to this and it feels familiar, it's really remembering that it's not about willpower alone. It's about understanding the connection between the brain, your emotional drivers, maybe past trauma, and then the impact it's had on a relationship. Because healing really involves all of those aspects.
I totally agree. So let's shift gear a little. One thing that always shocks people is just how massive the pornography industry really is.
Yes, I think because people think of it as a hidden thing, it's actually one of the biggest drivers of internet traffic globally. So some estimates suggest that adult sites get more visits each month than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined. It's a huge industry that's not going anywhere soon.
That's crazy. It's wild. And historically, porn has actually shaped technology. For example, in the 1980s, there was the VHS versus Betamax battle. The VHS won largely because the porn industry chose VHS as the format.
That's actually interesting. I'm sure our younger viewers won't even remember what VHS was. And again, when DVDs came and streaming and even early internet payment systems, the adult industry was once again one of the first to innovate. So some people even joke that the internet was built on pornography.
And whether that's literally true or not, there's no denying the impact. With high-speed internet, smartphones, and private browsing, access to porn has become easier and more anonymous than ever.
I think that accessibility has really changed the landscape. So, as we mentioned previously, someone in the old days would have to go into a video store or find magazines, but it's now literally in your pocket, 24/7 and unlimited. And so much of it is free. You don't even have to pay for it anymore.
Which also means the brain has never had to deal with this level of stimulation in human history. We're not actually wired to endless novelty on demand. That's part of why so many people feel overwhelmed by it.
But I see even in myself, with Netflix being around and Showmax, and I am sort of swamped with series. I don't have to wait a whole week like the old days to see the next episode. So I find even in myself, I become bored quickly. There's not enough to stimulate me. I feel like it's the same content going around. So imagine throwing pornography into that mix. It's already so much content, and you quickly become desensitized. You have this ever sort of present need to find something more exhilarating. Then we also have to consider the ethical concerns around pornography. It's unfortunately where the exploitation happens, where unrealistic body images come through. It's somebody who is looking fantastic 24/7. They're ready to go 24/7. But that creates unrealistic sexual expectations. In a normal relationship, you've got a partner who gets tired, who gets irritable, who doesn't always look at their best. And these all play into the way that porn can then shape people's self-esteem and their relationships.
That's so true. And for some people, the industry influence creates a deep conflict. They're actually drawn to it. That can create quite a lot of internal conflict. My morals, my values says I mustn't do it, but if I look at myself, suddenly I just find I'm drawn to it. I'm watching it. And I think it's many times it let me think of chocolates. I don't want to eat the chocolates, but if I look again, I'm standing in front of the fridge eating the chocolate. I'm drawn to that chocolate. So I think many people have that internal conflict. I don't actually want to do it, but if I look again, I actually do it. And that adds another layer to shame.
Okay. And we also need to talk about how problematic porn use often progresses. Again, like anything, it doesn't usually start off as an addiction.
I think it usually actually just starts off with curiosity, and maybe during adolescence or maybe later. But when it becomes a primary coping mechanism for stress or loneliness or unresolved trauma, that's when escalation actually begins. I've worked actually with quite a lot of men, and many men will say that they use masturbation as a way to deal with stress. So before exam time, before a rugby match, or before something that creates stress, they actually masturbate and watch porn. And many men tell me they can't actually masturbate without watching porn.
So it's interesting how the correlation becomes so strong. The brain starts linking arousal to a screen instead of a real human connection. And over time, that conditioning trains the nervous system to respond to pixels, fantasy, and novelty, rather than presence or emotional intimacy. And that's where real intimacy can start to feel flat or even anxiety-provoking, because the stimulation isn't coming from the heart anymore. It's coming from habit.
I think people also need to realize that masturbation is a sort of a self-soothing activity as well. So it is a way, as you say, to cope with stress. So there's certain stages to how this progresses. Like you say, it starts off with maybe curiosity. It then becomes maybe a bit more regular use. I feel better, maybe my stress levels are going down. And then that tolerance maybe comes in. So I need to escalate to more extreme content. There's a preoccupation. So even when I'm not doing it, I'm thinking about the next time I will be doing it. There's a feeling of a loss of control, that I'm no longer in control, that this thing has taken over. And then the negative consequences. It's maybe impacting my work life, or I might be doing it in places I shouldn't be doing it, at school or at work. And then my relationship maybe starts becoming affected by it.
Many people might start out watching occasionally, but then it can escalate. They spend hours, skip meals, skip social events, basically prioritizing porn over everyday life. And that's when we see the real functioning start to break down. I had a client who felt intense shame because his child fell and got hurt, and he didn't step in to help. He was actually watching porn at the time. The fact that he prioritized that over his child was a wake-up call for him about how deep the addiction had taken hold.
At the end of the day, it becomes such an obsession that even when there's a cry for help somewhere else, they still choose porn instead of responding to life. I've seen this a lot, especially with my male clients. Some of them admit that even at work, they end up watching porn on their work laptops, and that often leads to serious consequences. Some even get fired because of it, and that just adds another layer of shame and guilt.
because it's no longer a private struggle. It starts affecting their professional life, their reputation, and how they see themselves.
And I think what you've mentioned there is that it robs you of a lot of time. And a lot of my clients will say that too. It takes so much of my time. There's other things I know I should be doing. So that does impact, especially relationships. So often, especially in the beginning stages of denial, the person engaging in watching the pornography will say, well, I'm just watching pornography. It's not like I'm having an affair. But their partners often view it very differently. They really feel like they have been betrayed, that they're inadequate, or that they've been emotionally abandoned, because again, the time factor comes in there. In couples therapy, this is sometimes referred to as betrayal trauma.
Yes, and even if the person using porn doesn't intend to hurt their partner, the secrecy and the emotional withdrawal can feel just as painful as physical infidelity. Many couples, at the end of the day, feel I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I'm not chosen. They choose something else. I'm not excited enough. I'm not beautiful enough. And in the end of the day, I think people feel unloved.
And I think it's important to note that not everyone necessarily develops these patterns. So some people can use porn occasionally without it escalating. But I think one also has to ask the question if it's impacting your relationship, isn't it then anyway a bit of a problem? So for those who do get caught in the cycle, it can feel deeply isolating.
Which is why hearing stories, even anonymous client stories, is so powerful. People realize I'm not the only one. I'm not broken. I'm struggling with something that has an explanation, and I'm not alone.
So let's move to the more hopeful part, because often people caught up in this will feel very desperate sometimes, or they'll feel very hopeless about, can I recover from this? So let's look at what that healing looks like. So I always say first, education is crucial. Knowledge is power. The more you know, the more equipped you are to deal with something. You need to understand the brain, how the cycle of addiction works, and then the role of shame can also be incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. And clients often say, I thought I was just weak. When they learn there's a neuroscience explanation, it reduces the shame and opens the door to change.
And I think it's important for people to realize addiction is a very difficult something to pack on by yourself. So going for therapy and going for help is really important, especially trauma-informed therapy, because the pornography is not the real issue. It's what is the root cause behind it. The pornography is the coping mechanism for dealing with the unresolved wounds and loneliness and rejection or shame. So often a person will just try not to watch the pornography and they'll get it right for a while. But if that root cause is still there, it's just a question of time until they relapse again.
I think that's the goal of therapy, is to help people to understand the root cause and how and where the root cause actually come from, and how to process that wound. Maybe it's the wound of rejection or the wound of abandonment, because the mind also works with association. So every time that person gets triggered by that original wound, they would want to go back to the pornography. And that is the cycle that needs to stop. To heal is not easy and it's not linear. It brings a great insight and awareness and compassion for yourself. And that insight also helps you to understand others better and to have more compassion for others. It's so easy to judge, but it's much more difficult to try to understand where someone comes from. The whole world just needs a little bit more of love. My mom always says, everyone in the world just looking for a little bit of love. But if we can't even identify our own patterns, then we can't even love ourselves. If we can't love ourselves, we can't love others. And I think in relationships, people feel so frustrated. I don't want to do this. I want to be the perfect husband or the perfect wife. But now this behavior is coming between us and the relationship. There's also practical strategies that helps automatically in the healing process, like mindfulness, grounding, journaling triggers, replacing the behavior with healthier alternatives like exercises, creativity, or connecting with people. So there's lots of great techniques and tools to add, but I still think the most important thing is to understand the root cause and understand the trigger.
And I think often couples don't necessarily always discuss sex to start off with. What is their idea of what is acceptable? What do they like? What do they don't like? We get this idea, it's like a romantic movie. Everything will just magically fall into place if you've met someone that you love. And it's not necessarily like that at all. We need to have those tough conversations sometimes.
People have like an idea of who the person must be, an idea of the relationship must be, exactly like you've said, like that fantasy story. So people get so trapped in the idea. And if you don't deliver according to my idea, there's disappointment, because the idea is actually the expectation.
Another really powerful tool is if we can bring in group support. So that helps to combat that feeling of isolation. I'm the only one struggling with this. And that you can start realizing I'm not alone, that I can share honestly with someone who's also battling with the same thing as me, where they can find that accountability and that they can start replacing the shame that they feel with connection with someone else.
Very true. And for couples, therapy helps rebuild trust, communicate openly, and reconnect emotionally. So healing isn't just about stopping porn, it's about restoring intimacy, honesty, and self-worth. Because I think that's the main core in a relationship. If the person feels, I can't trust you. You're doing something behind my back. And if you can do this behind my back, what else are you doing behind my back? So now it's creating a trust issue in the long run. And that's what I love about couples therapy. At least in a space where I feel safe, I can speak my truth. And the moment you feel I've spoken my truth and I feel heard, at least healing can start to begin. For many people, we're so afraid to say what I truly feel, but it's liberating to say what we truly feel. But that's actually where healing starts.
Exactly. And I think the message really that we're trying to get out there is recovery is possible. So you're not doomed to live this life in secrecy or shame in this endless cycle that you feel you just can't break. With the right support, you can really start rewriting your story.
So to anyone listening, if you or someone you love is struggling with pornography addiction or problematic use, you are not alone. Support does exist and healing is possible.
And taking that first step is often the hardest. It takes the most courage to be able to speak openly and to break that silence. But that's why we wanted to have this conversation today, because it's a topic that's very seldom discussed. I've even had clients who've said to me that even individuals sometimes in the mental health field are reluctant to discuss really the core details that go around pornography addiction, which keeps the clients from discussing certain things because they need to feel they've got that safe space where they can have those honest and very real conversations.
And don't you have like a support group, Jean-Marie?
Yes. So a few months back, I couldn't find really a support group to refer my clients to, specifically in terms of pornography addiction. So I decided to start my own one. And I have to say, it's been such a privilege to be able to run that group. And the feedback that I've gotten is usually beneficial in terms of being able to share that and have a safe space, and also where they don't feel that they're so isolated.
Yeah, so please, if you need help, please contact us, and we can also connect you with that support group. So it brings such a lot of healing to hear not only your own story, but to hear other people's stories as well. So thank you for joining us on this episode Beyond the Surface. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you are more than your struggles.